Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick, and I'm your host on the Echo Academy podcast, a podcast dedicated to uncovering helpful tools and strategies that can help make your quality of life at work better. On today's show, we figure out how to rediscover fulfillment in your career. And to help us do that is my guest, Susan de Silva. Susan is a former lawyer as well as a certified professional life and executive coach who practices at the Silva Coach. As a coach, Susan helps people who are successful at what they do and yet who are at a crossroads get clear on how they want to live their life so that they have no regrets. As part of a coaching program, she works with her clients to unpack their unique life purpose and values and to understand how they get to make choices to take charge of their lives, including their career. If you'd like to find out more about Susan and this episode, you can go to echo.academy/Susan. That's ekho.academy/SUSAN. I'm thrilled to have Susan on today, so without further ado, here's my interview with Susan de Silva. So thanks for being part of this podcast, Susan.
It's my pleasure.
So today's topic is really on how to rediscover fulfillment in your career. Now, the key word here, I guess, is rediscover because sometimes, we could be new to a career or we could be in the middle of it or we could even be in the tail end of it, but sometimes it doesn't feel fulfilling anymore. And I don't know, I feel this topic could be important to people listening in terms of them helping them understand some ways to rediscover that sense of fulfillment since we spend most of our waking hours at work.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe a good place to start before we delve into all of this is I would love to hear what your definition of fulfillment is. Um, do you go by a fixed definition or?
Fulfillment is, I think it's a feeling. It's like that feeling of resonance, that feeling of when everything is just spot on. It's like that tuning fork that we used to use when we tune a piano, that perfect ding sound.
Yeah.
And that is the resonance I'm talking about. That's when you're really on point and everything makes sense, and that's fulfillment. So I think it's the feeling. And fulfillment, I would say, is I want to say it's different than happiness, because I feel that happiness is like you've finally bought that thing and you're really happy, and you know it's fleeting. But with fulfillment, it's very enduring. So there's a slightly different feeling than happiness, although in fulfillment there often is real joy.
And do you feel happiness is fleeting and we constantly have to seek it out?
I suppose it's just words,
Yeah.
but I'm distinguishing that. I'm trying to distinguish with the limitation of words
Yeah.
the difference between the feeling of fulfillment and the feeling of happiness. Happiness can be in fulfillment, but fulfillment need not be in happiness.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense actually, and you're right. I guess words don't have there isn't enough vocabulary out there to really truly define
Yes,
fulfillment and
especially when we're
happiness.
talking about feelings.
Exactly, but for me at least, fulfillment is when you wake up feeling like there's a purpose to your life, and it's whereas happiness is for me is I'm happy to just wake up, right? But
Okay.
yeah, but fulfillment is knowing that when I
Yeah.
wake up,
Yeah.
I have value to bring to this world,
Yeah.
and not only that, I get to fulfill that part of me and to really bring that value to
Beautiful.
this world.
Yeah. And what you're talking about goes to how how we get fulfillment. How do you feel fulfilled? And that really, really comes down to who we are.
Right.
And who we are is really, I think it just boils down to it's expressed by two things, by our purpose, our life purpose, and what's most important to us, which I'll call our values.
Okay.
So, what you're talking about is this thing where you wake up and you know your purpose, and you know that when you go out into the world, when you head out to work, you get to express your purpose in what you do in your work, and that in your work becomes just a platform for expressing what's most important to you.
Right.
And that's fulfillment.
And I guess I'm almost digressing to the questions I actually want to ask you, but just to add on to that point, or really to find out your point of view, do you need to be, in order to be fulfilled, I suppose there has to be some element of being mindful and being present in the moment, because it seems from what you've said just now, like I don't think you can feel fulfilled if you are not really living in the present moment, because there's if you're thinking about the past or thinking about the future, I think there's this sense that you're not making the most of the now. So by definition, would you be fulfilled?
You know, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it is mindfulness to me is about noticing what's going on and noticing my perspective right now. How am I seeing something?
Right.
Right now, I'm sitting here. Am I noticing that we're in this bright room, this quiet space with the aircon running, or is my mind drifting far away to something I'm going to have to do on Monday?
Right.
And both of them are not wrong, but which one serves me or which one does not serve me? So to
Right.
me, mindfulness is about noticing my perspective and the choice I am making about my perspective, and noticing whether that's serving me.
Right.
Does that serve me? When I say does that serve me, we go right back to does it serve my purpose? Does it serve what's most important and meaningful to me?
Right.
And if my perspective is not serving what's most important to me, then I get to change my perspective. I always have a choice to change my perspective. So it's a bit like this. It's like walking, along a forest path, and I could be walking and saying, "Oh, this is so beautiful." The sunlight's coming through the trees, and the birds are singing, and everything looks so green. And I could be thinking that, or I could be walking on that exact same forest path, and I could be in a perspective which is, this is so scary.
Right.
It's kind of dark here. Goodness knows what creepy crawlies are, hanging out under the bushes right here. I can hardly wait to get out of here. Same situation, but it is my perspective that affects how I feel in the moment.
So that's a really great segue to our first question, which is, if we don't find work fulfilling anymore, how can we determine if there's something we can do at work to fix that, or if it's time to chart a new career path?
So I think the starting point, that's a great question. It really points to the starting point, which is that it is really, what does fulfillment mean to you? What is fulfilling to you? And what fulfillment means to a person really comes from deeply understanding what has purpose and meaning for you. And every person, everybody, whoever you are, wherever you are, you have a purpose, and you know what's important to you. You just might not have been looking at that, deeply.
And in terms of in terms of that fulfillment or that purpose, it's it's interesting, because at least for me, I think to myself, like, especially, I mean, and this has nothing really to do with work, but for example, just in life in general, when I'm not feeling fulfilled, I think it's also at that point where I also start to question what my purpose is. But but it never came about before, and I always have this idea of what my purpose is, but it's only when that sense of fulfillment starts to fade, where I'm thinking, oh, what is my purpose? Am I I'm thinking about it in the right way?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there a blueprint in a way to figure
Wow.
out how, or at least
I
some questions we
s-
can ask ourselves?
yeah, I have something I just called my personal leadership framework,
Okay.
and it starts with really recognizing and really being aware of who I am and how I make my choices. And who I am and how I make my choices really comes again from knowing my life purpose and knowing my values. And once I know that, then I know who I am. And once I know who I am and who I'm being, from there I can decide what I want to do. So I distinguish between being and doing.
Right.
And in what I want to do, if what I choose is aligned to who I am, to my purpose, to my values, to what's important to me, then there is that feeling of fulfillment, and there's that feeling of resonance and zest and
Yeah.
engagement and just like deep satisfaction. And when what I'm doing is not aligned to who I am, to my purpose, to my values, well, that's not wrong. It's just that it's going to feel dissonant, the opposite of resonance.
Yeah.
There's going to be that feeling of discrepancy, that off feeling, and that's a flag. It's always a flag that maybe what I'm doing is actually not aligned to my purpose and to what's most important to me, to who I am.
Right.
So it's not aligned to my being, what I'm doing.
Right.
So before we do, we need to really know who we are being.
And that's really interesting. I want to delve deeper into that, because if there's a dissonance between being and what I'm doing, and that's a red flag, does that mean I should be thinking about a new career path? Or because it's tricky, right? Because I guess in the modern world sometimes we don't always have that luxury of choice, and for whatever reason, right? And when I mean luxury of choice is, maybe we are looking in a job market or looking for a new career,
Sure.
but we are not getting the opportunities we want. So when that's happening and we are stuck in the job that we're
Mm.
in, is there a way we can kind of reconcile the difference between who we are being and what we are doing?
Comes back to choice again. Um, we always have a choice of our perspective. We just talked about that. And in any situation, um, we get to choose our response to that situation. It's what Viktor Frankl said. He was a, a neuroscientist who was incarcerated in concentration camps during World War II. He had the opportunity to observe human nature at its very worst and also at its very best.
Right.
And from his observations, he came up with his ideas. Um, and one of the statements that he has, which I really, really love and which really resonates with me, is this. He says that between stimulus, which is the situation, the circumstance over which perhaps I have no control, between stimulus and response, my response to that situation, there is a space. And in that space, there is choice. And that is the one human freedom that can never be taken away from you.
Right.
And he should know. And then he says, and in my choice of my response lies my freedom and my growth. And so I think what he's saying in the situation that you've described is that we don't have any, perhaps at the moment, we don't have any control over our work situation, but we always have a choice over how we want to respond to it.
Okay.
And so we get to think about what our responses might be, and that will usually be a matter of my perspective. So my current perspective is okay, I hate my job. So is that serving me? No, probably not. And so, what other perspective could I bring to the situation? And I could choose maybe to look at what's important to me and consider how, even in this situation, I can express what's important to me in how I show up at work. What would that be? Maybe working, maybe respect is something that's really, really important to me. And maybe even in a job I don't enjoy, or maybe especially in a job I don't enjoy, maybe I could come to work and work with respect. And what would that mean?
Right.
Maybe instead of switching off, maybe respect means I really show up and I'm really present and I'm really doing the best I can.
Right.
And maybe I'm impacting others in some positive way by the way I'm showing up. So that goes back to through the lens of what's important to me and my purpose, how I want to show up at work. Or maybe I get to bring um, a sense of appreciation. Maybe I get to bring a sense of appreciation that no matter what the situation is, there always is something in it to appreciate. And maybe I bring that to my job and I see that in the midst of everything, there is something, maybe much, to be appreciated. But maybe I look at my job and I see that it really it really isn't where I'm going to thrive in the long run. There's something here that perhaps um, is truly negative for me. Maybe it is a culture that's perhaps extremely negative, and
Right.
it's affecting me. Then I think um, in that case, I think I have a choice. That's a slightly different choice. I have a choice to remain here, or I have a choice to go.
Yeah.
And the truth is that whatever perceptions we might have about not being able to move, actually is no slavery
Right.
anymore, and we can always leave our jobs. So that then asks whether maybe there's a inner saboteur going on, a saboteur that says, nah, you can't get
Yeah.
that job, no, no point trying, no, you're not good enough. Those voices,
Yeah.
those are our inner saboteurs, and what they do is that's the fight or flight um, aspect of us. It's built in.
Right.
um, we just need to notice that we've got them, and we need to notice when they're acting up,
Yeah.
and then we need to make a choice to manage our saboteurs. So sometimes the saboteurs keep us in our comfort zone, and that's why we're staying in the job, maybe. But our comfort zone really isn't comfortable anymore, and we know it because there is this feeling of dissonance and there's this feeling of it's off.
Yeah. Right. It's interesting because I did enjoy the Viktor Frankl book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah,
Um, and it's interesting because I can really appreciate everything he says, and it's almost like he comes from a place of authority, being in the situation he was. Having said that, the concept of choice, to me at least, is it feels like a double-edged sword, because it's not really the choice, it's the consequences after the choice has been made. Oh, what I mean by that is, for example, let's say you stay in a job you hate, and you want to change that perspective, and perhaps you can have the positive outlook. For example, uh, Viktor Frankl, noticing the good in the people around, uh, but you're also exposing yourself to the bad, you know and if that bad doesn't change, for him, for example, he didn't have a choice. It's not like, I don't want the bad, I need to leave Auschwitz. He couldn't do that, so hence the reason. But if we have that choice, um, for example, the choice is, okay, do I stay and handle this with positivity, or do I leave and handle this uncertainty of of knowing whether I'll get a job or getting the job I actually want? I think that, at least in the first world, seems like a quite a predicament, because
It's a
it,
predicament. It's a predicament, and it's natural to feel that way. The perspective that going out and risk taking a risk um, is what's holding us back. And that perspective that it's a risk is our saboteurs doing a great job. But if we were to call on our purpose and our values and our wiser self, if we were to ask ourselves, what would our fulfilled life look like? And look at it from that viewpoint. And for example, imagine that in 5 years from now, you are absolutely living that fulfilled life. And have your future self come now and talk to you. What would that future self tell you? What would that future self tell you right now? What would have to change for you to be there in 5 years from now?
that feels like a very difficult question.
Your future self will know.
Yeah,
Your
that's
future
true.
self will absolutely know.
Okay. Maybe for the benefit of the listeners, I can use myself as an example. So my future self.
Feel it, and just what would that be? What would that look like? What would you be doing?
I think whether it's my own company or part of a company, I would like to spend my working days in an environment that is, I don't know, that at the end of the day, I can smile when I go home, knowing that number one, I've done a job that I'm fulfilled in, and number two, um, I'm surrounded by people that are, that are aligned to what my beliefs are, and or at least who respect my beliefs, and also I guess number three, the ability to help them in some way.
Wow, those are
Yeah,
such strong values for you.
yeah. I mean, and it's funny because and it's born out, and my answers are born out of the mistakes I've made, I guess, where at least in my younger days when I just started my career, everything was very reactive, and to some degree it still is. I would say a good 40% of the way I work is very reactive, which I don't think is very good.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
reactive in the sense that, if I feel um, if I feel something is not right, then I feel the need to call it out. And this notion of professionalism or 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 anything like that just goes out the window. I'm like, no. Yeah, yeah. And by the same token, like, I expect the same in return. So like, uh, but now as I get older, I appreciate um the importance of keeping relationships at the very least amicable
Mm,
and friendly, because
mm,
at the end of the day, nothing gets done if people hate each other.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I learned, so knowing what I know now, it's about trying to put myself in a situation
Yeah.
where everyone has the same,
Yeah.
or at the very least, everyone has the desire to learn how to be in this situation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sounds like the culture of a place is really, really important to you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just tell me a little bit more about that what you do is actually helping people. What's that?
Mm, I don't think I have a specific way of helping people. I think it's more just the idea that I have the ability to play is a big deal. So even if it's just like something as simple as them having a bad day and having the opportunity to say, "Hey, everything's gonna be all right,"
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
for me, there's a lot of value in that, because
Yeah.
I've heard it being said to me,
Yeah.
and I feel the power.
Yeah.
So for me, trying to create that environment
Yeah.
to do that, and for me to do that is really important.
Yeah.
But the challenge, for me at least, is when I'm not in that in the emotional state. Like for example, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, I'm unable to do those things, and for
Yeah.
me that is a
Yeah.
a
So
bit challenging.
that's two separate things.
Yeah,
One is what you really care about, and that is I'm getting this image of a really strong shoulder that others can lean on.
yeah.
As you say that, how does that land for you?
Um, someone as with a shoulder.
Mm.
I don't know if I am. I try to be, but I don't know if I'm
What
actually good at that.
give me a picture then. If it's not a strong shoulder, what would that be?
Mm, I suppose just a listening ear.
A listening
Yeah.
ear. Yeah.
I don't. I'm not perfect, but I'm very good at keeping judgment aside, I think. And so for me, that my greatest asset, I think, is being a listening ear, because there's really no judgment coming from me.
Right.
So,
So you'd be a listening ear for others, so that
at the very least, they can release whatever negativity that's within them.
right.
Sometimes just speaking really helps, right?
Right.
So yeah, so I think, and I think that's a superpower we should all have
Yeah.
at some capacity, because in the
Yeah.
modern world,
Yeah.
we just need a listening ear sometimes.
Yeah. You've just described who you want to be in 5 years' time, where you want
Okay.
to be. It's in a space in which the culture is that kind of culture, where
Right.
people are supportive, where they're working with respect, where there's a lot of care,
Yeah.
and where you are able to be a listening ear that helps other people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now you're there.
Yep.
Now look back to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Really just see where you are now.
Yeah.
And you might have to just close your eyes. And what do you want to say you're from yourself who's 5 years there,
Mm-hmm.
as you look back at you here?
Mm-hmm.
What does your future self want to say to you?
I suppose for me at least, it is to not let the bad affect my ability to do good. I think that is something I don't think I do very well now, because the moment the bad happens, I'm like, self-care. I need to close out and close everything and just focus on me. Whereas I think the opposite actually helps me more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. How will you remember that? How will you
that's a tough
how
one,
will
Susan.
how will you call up that energy, this energy that you have right now, when you need it most?
I don't know, to be honest.
You can think of a gesture that you will call to mind, a picture that you will call to mind, um, um, a picture that maybe you'll keep, on your computer, that
Yeah.
will help you remember what's most important to you, which is
Right.
that when things are not going well, that's exactly when you are going to be.
Yeah. If it's a picture, I don't know if it's an appropriate picture, but a picture of my wife, I don't know if that's relevant.
It only has to
Yeah.
mean
Something to me.
to you.
Yeah, because my wife is a very good example of someone who shows unconditional love. And that's something I aspire to be, and something I think I'm terrible at. Like I think
So no judgments.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, of course, I mean, I'm not judging myself. I'm just saying, like, I'm terrible at it, in terms like there are very few relationships that like have comes with comes with no conditions, but the rest be, I don't know, I feel very transactional about it almost. Very few is unconditional, whereas um, with my wife, I mean, she comes from a place of unconditional love, and of course, I mean, she takes it away if people don't like people are toxic to her life. But I don't know. It's always nice to start from that place, and I wish I could do that too, I guess.
You can.
Yeah.
You
So that
can.
picture maybe would help me remember.
That's important to you.
Yeah.
And you get to
definitely.
make a choice every day, in the small things as well
Right.
as in the big things. And the more you do it, what you're really doing is you're firing up uh, the neural pathways
Mm-hmm.
in your brain that help you to become more and more and
Right.
more what you want to be. In the same way where you do the opposite, you're building that neural pathway that strengthens more and more the way you don't want to be.
Right.
It's very interesting the way in our brain works. And you know how we always say we work, we're using less than 10% of our brain.
Yeah.
You really get to think that you have got a trillion neural pathways just waiting for you to pick one and really build it and
Right.
make it into one of those that really serves you, like all the other ones that serve you.
Right. Let's say I see that as me understanding where I want to be. So perhaps for the listeners, maybe it's good to understand how how do we take actionable steps to get to um, where we need to be now. If once we know what that looks like, because I don't know. I think I sometimes I feel, or if maybe it's beneficial for listeners if I use myself as an example, so we can visualize something at least. So let's say if I have a fixed mindset, for example, I think a certain way. Do I need to expand that way of thinking to discover how to get to that other way, or how to get to where I want to be, or I don't know. Is there a way I should be thinking?
I suppose, first of all, you think about whether your current viewpoint is helping you or not.
Okay.
And if it's not helping you, then looking at other perspectives and trying to sense the one that does help you. And the one that does help you is almost always the one that comes from who you are again,
Right.
your life purpose and your values. And so we keep coming back to that. It's such a principle, it's such a starting point that anything else that we talk about is not grounded unless you know what your life purpose is and,
Right.
and what's most important to you, what your values are. As far as life purpose is concerned, I wish I could just tell you that you could find it just like that.
Yeah.
But I don't. My experience is that first, the good news is that you have it. You absolutely have it.
Have what exactly?
You have a life purpose.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
However, it is hard to unpack it by yourself.
Right.
It's so much a part of you. It's so much a part of you that it's hard for you to pick it out, distinguish it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like your own scent, you can't detect it
Yeah.
as easily. It's so
Yes.
much a part of you. And so I think that needs somebody to assist you to unpack your life purpose.
Right.
But you're not creating it. It's already there. And it's, in your case, it's got something to do with this listening ear.
Yeah.
I feel that that comes across pretty strongly, and it's just really unpacking that to see what that is.
Right.
As far as your values are concerned, those ones you can do yourself. Your values are what's most important to you, qualities that are most important to you. And what I request my clients to do, and they always get to say yes or no or counter propose, but most of them say yes, is to do this, is to really think about what's most important to you and write it down. Take time to do it, mull over it. You might get the first 5 values out really easily, and then you might have to really, really think about the rest and try and get to at least 15.
Right.
And having gotten there, this is the fun part, then rank your top 10. Rank your top 10 from the most important to the 10th one. And that really really helps you to go, you know, really expand your awareness of who you are and what's important to you.
Right.
And when you have that, that becomes like your map.
Yeah.
It becomes like your framework, and this is your framework. And as you are looking at your life purpose and your values, noticing that you have got your inner saboteurs, that's your built-in fear part of your brain,
Right.
noticing that that will be rearing its head because you look like you're getting ahead of yourself now.
Right.
You're thinking
Yeah.
about purpose and
Yeah.
values, so it's likely to rear its head and tell you no, no. And every time you hear the word yourself saying the word but, that might well be your saboteur speaking.
Right.
So noticing that, and managing your saboteur, maybe visualizing your saboteur, and having your saboteur just sit to one side and do something like play with Lego or something.
Right.
And remember that you are naturally creative, and you are resourceful, and you are whole. You already are. You have everything you need to get to the answers that you want. And so knowing that, while on the one hand there is the saboteur that's keeping you small, on the other hand you have your inner resources, all these inner resources, which are the wisest part of you, the part of you that always knows what's best for you,
Right.
and really getting in touch with that. So this is more than just thinking. We rely so much on our intellectual part of our brain, and we've got pretty far with in life with that, but we've got this whole rest of the brain
Yeah.
that we don't listen to. So that wise part of the brain, the limbic part of the brain, is wise but has no language. So its voice is very soft,
Right.
and you really have to listen. And you've heard it before. It's that voice that you just wish you had listened to.
Yeah.
That one.
Right.
That one. You know it well. And it's just really listening to it, and trusting in it, and noticing that the more you do that, the more it's how well it's serving you.
And just to play devil's advocate here, um, hearing that part of our mind, as you say, that is full of wisdom, does it guarantee us the right answers though? I mean, it's because, for example, let's just, for example, we play the odds, and we 50% of our decisions are the brain that we use the most, and the other 50% we take decisions from the quieter part of that brain that we don't really take. um I don't know, does can we be certain that the 50% from the quieter part of our mind is the one that gives us the best answers?
It's only when you call on the wisest part of yourself, and you're being real about it, and you're coming from your place of purpose and values, that you will know the answer to that.
Okay, so it's a thinker.
It's
Yeah.
not a it's really not thinking.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a knowing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a knowing.
Right.
It's again, we don't have enough words for what we're trying to express, but
Yeah.
there's a difference between, like, I think I should do that rationally,
Yeah.
and yet I know, um, this is what I should be doing. I know it.
Right.
I just read today something written by a native poet
Yeah.
who used the words sacred knowledge versus logical knowledge. And it is something like that,
Okay.
where I think what she's referring to, and what we're referring to, is a knowledge that comes from the whole of ourselves, and not simply our neocortex, the
Right.
intellectual part of our brain.
Right. So actually using our body and mind to make a decision
Our whole
almost.
selves, our whole
Right.
selves.
That's interesting. So I suppose to to kind of summarize what we spoke about, um, from start to because we've unpacked quite a few things here, and and I would like to summarize it so like the listener would be able to kind of understand, if nothing else, with systematically how they should think about this. So, and correct me if I'm wrong throughout this. So the first one is really to understand um, our purpose, and
Yes.
the second part is to figure out what our values are,
Yes.
and then to align it with our purpose.
So your purpose and your values together are an expression of who you are
Okay.
together, and they will be, they will be self-supporting, I suppose you could say. They are aligned to each other already. They
Right.
will be,
Right.
and then from there, um, from the perspective of your purpose and your values and what's most important to you, then looking at what you want to do.
Right.
And as you're doing that, noticing that on the one hand, you probably have your saboteurs jumping up and down telling you that you can't,
Yeah.
and having to manage that.
Right.
And on the other hand, knowing that you have and you've always had your wisest self, and you know what you are to do that is aligned to your purpose and values, to who you are.
Right. So, just to clarify, so once we've got the purpose and values, um, we should expound and figure out what exactly we would want to be doing, and then map it back to where we are now and try to fill in the gaps.
Once you've got some clarity there, then you can start brainstorming.
Right.
You can start brainstorming about, you know,
Sorry. Clarity where exactly?
clarity about what's important to you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You can start brainstorming about two things. One is what you want to be more of,
Right.
given this, and it might be you want to be more courageous.
Right.
You want to be more living as if you were that future self already,
Right.
and so on. And then you might also want to be thinking about what you want to be doing more. Maybe I want to be with this. I want to be just putting out more CVs. Just maybe I just want to be brainstorming. I want to talk to more people and network with more people. I want to maybe you know upskill, maybe.
Right.
So there's what I want to be more of and what I want to do more of, and then pick one from each, so that you're not overwhelmed by all this. Just pick one from each, and and really commit to doing that.
Gotcha.
And it can be scary.
Yeah.
It can be scary, because you're maybe stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that when you step into the unknown, with a lot of it will take doing. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take courage. But when you do that, I have a feeling that if you come from a place of your purpose and values, you will look back and you will ask yourself why it took you so long.
Right. That's so true.
I'm kind of speaking from my own experience.
Yeah, and I can relate. I think I can feel it. Yeah, and I guess that's how we rediscover purpose in our careers.
Yeah, it's about unpacking what's there,
Yeah.
because we seldom look there. We're not trained to look there. We're not taught that. We're taught to develop our physical, our financial, and our intellectual dimensions.
Yeah.
And we're never taught about developing or investing in the other two dimensions which exist in us, whether we like it or not.
And what are those two?
And they are our emotional dimensions and this human need for purpose and meaning.
Right. That is true. I guess we lack a bit of education in that field.
I'm not aware of I'm thinking of my own life. I am not aware of any institution or organization that invested in these aspects
Yeah.
of either their people or their organization
Yeah.
yet. But I think that that's changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, sometimes, I mean, a friend of mine was telling me way back, a few years ago, he was like, sometimes I feel someone taught me how to be a human, because it's not as intuitive as people think it is, and it would be nice if there was a curriculum for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would be so great to have a framework that just really, that really just understands all our dimensions
Right.
and teaches us the way they teach us some of our dimensions, but teach us the whole thing.
Yeah.
And imagine if we could just bring all of that to to what we do and to the world,
Yes.
every one of us, what how much, what would be the impact of that?
Right.
What would be the impact of that? There are enough reports to show that there is a business case for this. This is not just about fuzzy stuff. There are enough reports, so many that show a correlation between how we engage our people as whole people,
Yeah.
companies working with purpose, and how they are, and how that's absolutely um, going to the bottom line.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
in fact, it turns out that some of the best companies in the world know their purpose and operate from their purpose in a real way,
Right.
not in some poster on the wall way.
Right. Okay. So, I guess my final question is more along the lines of, if you could summarize um, this whole discussion almost, what would you encourage our listeners to do, at least as a starting point?
The first thing I'd say though is that every one of you is limitless. You are naturally creative already, and you're resourceful, and you are whole. And that's your starting point. And from there, really unpack your life purpose and sit down and work on your values and come up with your top 10. And from there, knowing what's most important to you, do some brainstorming, maybe with a friend, as to from there what you need to be more of,
Right.
and what you want to do more of, and pick something from there and go ahead and work on that.
Susan, it's been a pleasure, really, just just listening and even practicing this idea of purpose and how I can, get to where I want to be in 5 years. And also, like before we really end off, I'd like to take this opportunity to have you, if businesses or companies out there want to get in touch with you to, in terms of the work you do, maybe you can tell people what type of work you do and how they can reach you.
Sure, thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a life and executive coach now, and I really work with people who have reached a crossroads in their lives, who want to get clear on how they want to live the next phase or the rest of their lives so that they have no regrets.
Right.
So that if that resonates with your listeners, I'd be very happy to chat with them. And
And how can they reach you?
I've got an email address, which is
Okay.
Susan.desilva at the Silva Coach, that's spelled SILVA.com.
Got it.
And I think that's the best way to reach me.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the podcast descriptions as well, just in case people misspell it in some way.
Yeah, you have to spell it properly, otherwise you'll get that rather
Someone else.
handsome-looking Portuguese football coach showing up.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, there you go. I guess not a bad thing too, I guess. But yeah, thank you so much, Susan.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I
Thank
hope
you,
to have
Nick.
you back too.
Thank you.